Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode of Overbooked here on the channel, the series where I talk about every single book on my shelves because I need to figure out who this strange man who's just appeared in my garden is. Today, though I'm still losing my voice, we are going to be talking about A.M. McLemore's Wild Beauty. This originally published in 2017, it is a YA magical realism book, as most of A.M. McLemore's books are, and I was gifted it for Christmas in, I believe, the end of 2017. I read it for the first time in 2018, and then it kind of languished on my shelves for a year or two until I did my A.M. McLemore read-along at the start of this year, 2022, where I read it again. Some quick disclaimers before we start. As I say, I was gifted a copy of this book. Nobody's paying me to talk about books, and all opinions are my own. I'm also going to keep this as spoiler-free as humanly possible. I don't think this is the kind of book that you can spoil, because so much of it is about the reading experience. However, if you do want to go in knowing absolutely nothing, click away now. I'll also link the story graph for the book below if you want to check out any spoilers. Nope, not spoilers. Content warnings. That's the word I'm looking for there. For almost a century, the Nomialvides family have looked after the grounds of La Pradera, a sprawling, beautiful place filled with flowers, because the Nomialvides family have the power to make flowers grow out of the ground. They're not sisters, they're kind of cousins, relations to each other, young women are the stars of this book, shall we say. The Nomialvides family has this wonderful power, but there is also a curse. The ones they love always end up disappearing. They never stay. So one day when a boy appears in the garden, the mystery becomes, who is this boy? Where has he come from? And also, why is he here? And does this mean that everyone else's loved ones are coming back? Question mark. So there's a mystery element to it, alongside a whole lot of discussion of identity, of love, of romance, of all of that stuff. As with all A.M. McLemore books, the prose in this is absolutely gorgeous. I don't want to sound like a stuck record on this because every single week I'm probably going to be saying the same thing, but I think that that particularly works in this setting because we have this very sort of opulent floral sense. So it's not opulent in the sense that they're very wealthy, but just in the sense of the flowers that are around them. And A.M. McLemore does a really good job of creating this kind of lush, vibrant environment in which everything takes place, and I think that the cover really helps with that because it does give you this idea of this explosion of florals that is La Pradera, and I think that it really works well, and it's a great backdrop against the beautiful discussion of emotion that this book has and a lot of the kind of complicated emotions that go through this, which I'll come on to. It's quite queer, is what I've written in my notes. I think what I like about this book is that not a lot of stuff is explicitly labelled, so you can kind of figure out your own idea of the various labels that are going on in this book, which I enjoy. I like a book that tells me, like, this character is bi, but I also like a book where it's like, this character's figuring out this character doesn't have the language to talk about what they want to talk about yet, so let's go. And I really enjoyed that, actually, and I like that development in A.M. McLemore's work, and I think that the difference between something like this, where it's less pinned down, and something like Lakelore, where these characters really do have the language. I like having that variety in their work. I think it's really important, and it's great reading. So if you're looking for this kind of step more into queer fiction, I think that these books make a really good option for that, and this one, in particular, is quite explicitly queer at times. I should say, in the sense that there are explorations of gender identity, as well as explorations of love and what it means to love someone, and familial love and romantic love and all of that kind of stuff. I actually really like the plot of this book. I think the mystery of it is well handled. There's a few elements that I'll come on to when I talk more about the cons of this that don't work as well for me compared to previous books, but I think that A.M. McLemore's kind of themes of injustice and historical wrong, as in wrong that has happened in the past, is really important and really shines through in elements of this book. So yes, I enjoyed it. It's not just I don't even know how to describe it. It's not just a romance. It's not just a mystery romance. It's sort of a mix of the two, which works quite well. I think that possibly it makes a little bit of a detriment to one and the other because you're trying to figure out one while the other is happening, but it still works really well, and there's some good rich people to hate, which is always nice. This is actually probably my least favourite A.M. McLemore book. Don't get me wrong, still really enjoyed it, still keeping it around on my shelves, had a great time, but compared to a lot of the others, I think this is the one that feels the most unfinished to me. And I've been talking a lot about magical realism and being used to things being unfinished, but I think in this sense, I feel like there's a lot of unfinished emotion that there isn't in a lot of the other books. A lot of the other ones have a real sense of catharsis towards the end. This one I'm left feeling like there's still quite a lot of conversations to be had. That's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just something I noticed this book compared to the other books, and it made me like it a little bit less. I've also talked about it not having labels, and that's I suppose is in some ways a con, because if you like to understand what a character is doing maybe. I think labels are really complicated, especially with something like identity, because a lot of the times these are teenagers. Maybe they don't know, maybe they are figuring it out. It's complicated to judge, but if you do like clearly labelled relationships, this might not be the book for you. And I also think that there is an element that I really didn't get on with. I think possibly because the girl code is just too rooted in me of, if your friend fancies someone, you do your best not to fancy them. But there is an element of a lot of people being interested in the same person, and I was never really sure if that person felt, how that person felt about that, you know? It was an interesting time. Overall, for me, this just isn't as strong as their other books, which I think is interesting because it is now their third full published novel. And I really like When the Moon Was Ours more and Weight of Feathers more, and it's interesting that this one just doesn't work. And maybe that means it's a personal thing for me, and it's just that elements of this weren't for me. It's hard, it's tricky to get to the third one and be like, this one I didn't like as much. Don't get me wrong. As I say, this is still very, very good. It still has a lot of hallmarks of A. McLemore's work. It has a good story, it has good characters, it has a wonderful setting. It's just not so much for me. And I think that there's a few elements of it that just don't quite make as much sense or don't work, and it leans just too far out of realism for my liking, which is weird, but it is how it is. However, if you were looking for what I believe is probably the most sapphic of all of their books, possibly, this might be one to go for. If you were looking for other things to read that were similar to this, I've thought of a couple. The Mermaid, the Witch and the Sea by Maggie Takuda Hall, I think has a few elements of the relationship ideas and such that might be interesting to explore in this. I've talked a little bit before about the Brooklyn Blue House series. I think that has a few elements, not hugely similar in tone, that's much more modern, but it does tick a lot of the same boxes in a lot of ways. And I also wondered about The Ones We're Meant to Find, which is a kind of dystopian-ish book that has a lot of, I don't even know how to describe it, just similar tone, I think. Overall, would I recommend reading this? I think if you are like me and you want to read all of A. McLemore's work, it is an important thing to read it. It's not the case that I'm advising that you skip this or anything. I think that if I were looking for a place to start, it would not be with this book, which makes it interesting that I did start with this, I guess. If you have read this and you wanted to then read something else to see if you were still really feeling it, I would say go with When the Moon Was Ours or Blanca Roja, so video from last week or the video from next week, and see how you go from there. If you don't like either of those, I think it's probably safe to say this isn't an author for you. But if you do like those, then I think this stands really well in combination with all of the other books. Have you read this? Do you have plans to? Do you have a favourite author where you have one of their works that you just don't like as much? And do you have an easy way of pinning down why? Let me know all of those things down in the comments below. If you haven't already, while you're down there, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. Though nothing makes me feel more loved and appreciated than my patrons over on Patreon who make videos like this possible and support the channel. If you would like to join their number and get videos early, you can check that out in the description below, along with my social media and my Discord if you would like to come and have chill chats about books. That's all from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. I've just got coffee on my glasses. You did.